Have you ever walked into a room and just known that someone had been there before you, even though the door was still locked, or realized the car behind you had been following you the whole way, no headlights, no turns? Or noticed that your own reflection in the mirror was moving just a little out of sync with your real body? Tonight, you're going to hear 3 stories. No blood, no killers, just the thinnest slivers between what's normal and what's wrong. Moments where someone or something slipped into your life through the tiniest of cracks. No noise, no warning. In this video, you'll hear 3 chilling stories. No blood, no monsters, just small things, just enough to make you hesitate before turning the lights off at night. Listen closely, because the scariest part might be the very last sentence. Walter Dean wasn't the kind of man easily disturbed by loneliness. He had grown used to silence, the subdued hum of life after 60, where time passes like wind sweeping across a sheet metal roof. Not loud, but cold. Since his wife Clara had passed from cancer 3 years ago, the wooden house on the edge of rural Nebraska had felt far too big for just a man and his dog. But he stayed, as if moving would mean wiping away the memories. And he wasn't ready for that. Clara had always loved the room upstairs, the one with the window facing the wheat fields and the gray hills in the distance. Since the day she died, Walter had kept the door to that room locked, not because he believed in ghosts, he didn't. He just didn't want to see her old canvas shoes, or that empty perfume bottle still clinging to a familiar scent. He didn't want that feeling, that pull back into a place that had already collapsed. That night, after welding a few metal bars in the shed, Walter took Benny out for a walk across the 7-acre stretch of land. The crescent moon cast light through the leafless trees, and their shadows, one old man, one dog, stretched long and thin across the dirt. As they passed the back of the house, beneath the 2nd-story bedroom window, Walter glanced up out of habit and froze. Behind the dusty glass, he saw the faintest motion, something, pulling back into the room, fast, as if it knew it had been seen. Walter blinked. Maybe it was a trick of the eye, or the wind, or something else. He stood there a long time, his heart thudding in his chest like a slow, steady hammer. Benny remained still, too, eyes fixed on the window, letting out a low, uneasy growl. Soft, but enough to raise the hairs on the back of the neck. And in that moment, Walter knew. That night, something had looked back at him, from the room he swore he'd never step into again. Walter woke at 3:12 a.m. to the low, steady, persistent growl from Benny. The dog wasn't barking, just growling from deep in its throat, eyes wide, fixed on the ceiling, directly above Walter's bed. And he knew exactly which room was up there. He sat up, his back drenched in cold sweat, even though the wood stove downstairs was still glowing red. The old wooden house creaked with familiar sounds, the wind hissing through door gaps. The soft cracking of the ceiling expands with the change in temperature. But beneath those noises, there was something else. Footsteps, uneven, unhurried, but unmistakable, right above him. Walter froze for a few seconds, then turned toward the hunting rifle tucked beneath his bed, a habit since the night he'd seen that figure in the window. He had promised himself he wouldn't become a paranoid old man. But some things defy explanation. Grabbing a flashlight, he stepped up each creaking stair, Benny close at his heels. The air on the 2nd floor felt colder than usual. The house normally held heat well, but tonight, up here, it was like something cold was breathing through the very walls. He reached for the doorknob to Clara's room, still locked. Walter unlocked it, the soft click of the latch cutting like a blade in the silent night. He pushed open the door. The flashlight swept across the thick dust blanketing the room. But everything was in place. Closet shut. Bed untouched. No sign of intrusion. Then Benny started growling again. Not in the room, but behind them. He turned. The hallway. Benny had stepped away, staring toward the end of the corridor, to the narrow stairway leading up to the attic. A door Walter had never opened, not once, since the day he bought this house. He stepped out into the hallway. The flashlight flickered. Beneath his feet, the floor groaned like it resented his weight. Benny didn't follow. He stayed frozen at the bedroom threshold, tail tucked down. Wind couldn't blow inside a house, but the attic door was moving, just slightly. A soft, almost apologetic creak echoed from the other side, like something or someone was shifting ever so lightly, waiting. Walter stood still, gun in hand. His old heart thudded so hard he feared it might be the first thing to break the silence. Then, the door stopped. Nothing happened. But Walter didn't sleep again that night. And the next morning, he found the kitchen light had somehow been turned on, even though he remembered clearly turning everything off. Walter never spoke of that night, not to anyone, not even to himself. He tried to live as though everything was still normal. Breakfast with toast and salted meat, boots on, off to the livestock shed, fixing the iron hinges on the broken gate. But in his mind, the second-floor room and those footsteps in the night clung to him like a thin layer of ice, still there, still waiting to crack. On the third night, Walter didn't sleep. He sat in his old armchair in the living room, Benny curled beneath his feet, eyes still watching the stairs. The kitchen light turned on again. And this time, Walter knew he hadn't forgotten. He remembered clearly, turning back to shut it off, right after dimming the stove. He didn't call the police. The first time, they had given him that look. The kind people give lonely old men who talk too much about shadows. But Walter didn't go to bed. Not out of fear, but because he had made up his mind. If it, whatever it was, came back again, he would meet it. No more hiding. On the fourth night, Walter climbed the stairs again. The doorknob was cold. When he opened the door, Benny didn't follow. The dog whimpered and slipped under the armchair. The room was not the same. The closet doors were flung open. Clara's clothes, her checkered dresses, the thick wool sweater she always wore in winter, lay scattered across the floor. He remembered sealing them away, folding everything neatly, putting it in boxes 3 years ago. Walter had no time to think. He swept the flashlight to the left, and then he saw her, a woman, standing in the doorway. At the edge of the hall's darkness, long hair veiled her face. She wore a dusty, silver-gray dress. Her arms hung limply by her sides, not Clara. The height wasn't right. The frame was too small. But what made Walter take a step back? There was silence. She didn't move. She didn't breathe. She just looked. He couldn't see her face, but he felt her eyes through the curtain of hair, cold like deep well water, reflecting nothing but emptiness. Walter tightened his grip on the shotgun and shouted, "Who are you?" She turned without answering and bolted down the stairs with impossible speed. Her steps made no sound, just a blur gliding through the dim light spilling from the living room. Walter gave chase, but when he flung open the front door, there was nothing. The snow outside was untouched, not a single footprint, not a single sound. Benny ran out behind him and let out a long, unearthly howl, a sound Walter had never heard from the dog before. From that night on, Walter was no longer himself. He still lived, still fixed fences, still walked the land with Benny. But now, every door in the house was locked tight each evening. The kitchen light was unplugged from the socket, and the shotgun stayed beside the armchair, not out of habit but instinct. He never went upstairs again, but that didn't stop. The sounds. Every night, at the same hour, 3:12 a.m., the footsteps returned, not hurried, not heavy, just the slow groan of wood, one board after another, as if someone were wandering the forgotten room above. One night in January, with snow piling soft and white across the porch roof, Walter sat in the living room as Benny began to howl, not bark, not growl, just howl, low and long like a lone wolf. Walter turned, following the dog's gaze. Outside the window, through a blur of falling snow, someone was standing there, still, not moving. No coat, no scarf, nothing against the cold, just a figure, silent, facing the window and watching. Walter didn't go to the door. He didn't reach for the gun. He simply sat there, closed his eyes, and listened. To Benny's steady howling, to the wind sneaking through the cracks, and to a feeling clearer than ever before. It wasn't that someone was watching him, it was that it had never left. Caleb Mason wasn't the kind of person afraid of the dark. Working the night shift for a wedding services company had turned the hours from midnight to dawn into something familiar, like the background music in a grocery store. Always there, barely noticed. He'd driven through the night from state to state more times than he could count, armed with nothing but a cup of lukewarm coffee and the dry, monotone voice of AM radio. But that night, something felt off, just slightly. It was around 2 a.m. Caleb was heading home from a wedding far out of town. His body was drained, his heart jittering from caffeine. Yet his mind was strangely sharp, like he was waiting for something that hadn't arrived yet. Not ready to go home just yet, he veered off the highway and pulled into a McDonald's near the exit. Not because he was hungry, but because of some unnameable pull. A yellow light flickered dimly above the awning. The drive-through window was still open. Caleb rolled down his window, placed his order, and glanced around while waiting. That's when he saw it. An old Chevrolet Impala, bronze-colored, with peeling paint like sunburned skin. It was parked in the farthest, darkest corner of the lot, just beyond the reach of the streetlights. Its windows were black, like empty eye sockets. No lights, no movement. But Caleb felt something inside that car, watching. He flicked his eyes back to the menu board, as if it could somehow protect him. The Chevrolet didn't move, didn't idle, didn't puff any smoke from the exhaust. It just existed there, as if it had always been there before he arrived, and would still be there long after he left. When the drive-through clerk handed him the food bag, Caleb didn't look back at the car, but in the rearview mirror, he caught the faint reflection of the Chevrolet's emblem, and it shimmered like a half-shut eye, just closing. Caleb drove out of the McDonald's, his hands gripping the steering wheel as if the asphalt might suddenly crack open beneath his tires. He didn't want to go home, not because it wasn't safe, but because the house was too quiet at night. Thin walls, his mother's old recliner, and that wall clock ticking over and over like a reminder. You're alone. He turned onto a side road that led up a hill. It didn't have a name, just a weathered wooden sign that read, Scenic Overlook. Back in the day, he and his friends used to hang out here after parties, sitting on the stone railing, staring out at the city below. Small, bright, and distant like a burn mark of light on the skin of the night sky. The lot was empty. The wind up on the hill was stronger, rattling the car with each gust. Caleb cut the engine but didn't get out. He just sat there, opened the paper bag, bit into a cold French fry. His eyes were fixed on the windshield. Less than a minute later, headlights flared in the distance. A car was turning off the main road, the bronze Chevrolet. Caleb didn't move. His back went rigid. The car rolled into the lot, slow and deliberate, like a shark circling a school of fish. Then it stopped, about 20 meters away, right at the edge. The same spot it had been at the McDonald's. The engine stayed on, but the headlights snapped off. No one stepped out. The doors remained shut. The windows stayed black, like the mouth of a cave. For a moment, the entire parking lot was drowned in the quiet glow of moonlight, where the two cars sat apart, like two strangers who didn't want to talk. But we were listening to each other very, very closely. Caleb turned to the passenger seat, searching for his phone. He thought about calling Isaiah, his best friend since high school, but his hand hesitated. What would he say? That a car parked nearby? No, not parked nearby. It was showing up twice, same time, same place, for no reason. Caleb unlocked his phone. His finger hovered over the contacts list. Then the Chevrolet flashed its headlights once, a single blink, like an eye. Caleb shuddered. He pressed call. Hello? Isaiah's voice came through, groggy. Caleb glanced toward the car. You busy? He said, voice tight. I need someone to go for a drive with me. Isaiah arrived less than 10 minutes after the call. His old pickup truck growled as it turned into the lot, headlights cutting through the low fog hovering above the ground. Caleb exhaled, relieved. The bronze Chevrolet was still there, unmoving in the dark. No reaction, no motion, like an animal playing dead. What's going on? Isaiah stepped out of the truck, eyes half-lidded but alert. Caleb pointed toward the bronze car. Isaiah squinted. Same one from McDonald's? Caleb nodded. I'm sure of it. They decided to walk up to the lookout point, the stone railing that overlooked the glowing valley below. The wind slid through the pines, sharp enough to sting their fingers. As they climbed the path, they kept glancing back at the parking lot. The Chevrolet still didn't move, until they were just about out of sight. In a blink, the car's interior lights flicked on. All four doors opened at once. 4 men stepped out, tall and short, each one different, not a word between them. They stood for a moment, like soldiers silently taking attendance. Then 3 of them began walking up the trail toward the overlook. Isaiah clenched his fists. Caleb didn't move. 4 guys, but only 3 coming up. The lead man wore a torn denim jacket and a hood pulled over his head. He gave a smile, not a friendly one. A smile meant for animals cornered in the woods. He held out a rolled cigarette. Want to smoke? Caleb shook his head. I'm good. Good's good, the man said. His voice was gravel-soaked in ice. The conversation unfolded strangely. Questions with no purpose, no context. Then the hooded one asked, You boys hit McDonald's late at night a lot? Caleb raised his head, steady. Sometimes. What about you guys? Thought I saw your car there. The smile vanished. The second man, smaller, wiry, stopped chewing his gum and stared coldly. The third shrugged, glancing over Caleb's shoulder. No one answered. The air locked up, heavy, still. Caleb swallowed. He had made a mistake. He mentioned a place they hadn't expected anyone to notice. He had made himself a witness. And then Isaiah stepped back, tugging gently on Caleb's sleeve. The fourth guy. Where is he? Caleb turned. The woods behind them were pitch black, silent. And just within the trees, a figure stood pressed against a pine trunk, half hidden in the shadows. In his hand, He held something long and pale, a pipe, or maybe a steel rod. No one spoke. No one had to. Caleb whispered, "Run." Caleb and Isaiah didn't wait another second. They turned and bolted down the trail, like two men waking in the middle of the night to find their house on fire. Branches whipped their faces. Pebbles skittered beneath their feet. Nothing mattered but the sound of footsteps right behind them. And just as they feared, they were being chased. 4 men, all 4. Not a word. Only the pounding of boots on forest soil, fast and heavy, as if they knew every bend, every slope, as if they'd done this before. Isaiah reached the truck first. Caleb was right behind. The doors slammed shut just as the footsteps hit the edge of the lot. The engine roared. Tires spun against gravel and dried leaves. The pickup tore off into the night, wind howling, hearts hammering. Caleb looked in the rearview mirror. 4 figures stood in the middle of the road, motionless, no longer chasing, no shouting, no angry gestures, just watching. The next day, they went back to McDonald's, bringing a photo taken from Isaiah's dashboard cam. A young employee looked at it, and her face went pale. "That guy used to work here," she said, pointing to the one with the crooked smile. "He got fired for stalking a girl on shift. The cops came. There was a restraining order." Caleb said nothing. Isaiah's grip tightened on his backpack strap. They never went back to the lookout point. But sometimes, Caleb still drove past the old turnoff, just to look. And on certain nights, even if he didn't see it, he knew the bronze Chevrolet was out there, somewhere along the edge. Lights off. Engine silent, just quietly, waiting for the right person. There are some autumns in Ardmore, Pennsylvania, that seem to never end. Red leaves linger on the ground for weeks, as if the whole town is stuck in a tired moment, waiting for snow that never comes. And in that stillness, teenagers begin looking for something to kill time, or at least to prove the town still had something worth being afraid of. Eli, Maxine, Jonah, Laura, Drew, and Nora, 6 friends since 7th grade, now older with their own cars and new phones, but still addicted to sneaking into places people warned them not to. Abandoned houses, collapsed bridges, and most recently, an old church at 198 Elmwood Avenue. Jonah was the first to bring it up on a Friday night, as they all sat in the bed of Eli's pickup truck, sipping soda and talking about things none of them would remember the next morning. "I heard that church got shut down because someone died in the basement. Probably closed because of mold," Maxine shot back, "or rats the size of cats." Whatever the reason, by Sunday night, they were there. They climbed over the rusted fence, their flashlights flickering like the breath of someone sick. The church was tall, narrow, and yellowed like a smoker's tooth. No sign. The front door was chained shut with rusted links, but Jonah already knew a side window was still loose. He'd been inside before, once, not long, and ever since then, he hadn't slept right. "There's something in the basement," Jonah whispered. "You won't see it, but it can hear you." The group slipped through the window like kids sneaking into some place they weren't supposed to be. Only this time, no one was joking around. Inside, it was pitch black. And the cold. It wasn't the crisp chill of autumn. It was a thick cold, like a well beneath the floorboards was pulling every drop of warmth from the air, inch by inch. The church floor had been completely ripped out. The wooden planks were gone, leaving only bare, raw earth, black and uneven, like stripped animal skin. At the center was a wide hole with concrete steps leading down. Strange and completely out of place in an old-style church. "This wasn't here before," Jonah murmured, uncertain. "What do you mean, wasn't?" Eli asked. "You've been down there?" Jonah shook his head. "I only stood at the edge. It used to be covered with metal mesh. Now it's gone." No one said anything else. They looked at one another. 6 friends, 3 boys, 3 girls, and the hole beneath them, breathing like a living thing. Finally, Eli switched on his big flashlight and stepped down first. Maxine and Drew followed. The other 3, Lara, Nora, and Jonah, stayed at the edge. "Not coming?" Maxine called up. "I hear something," Nora whispered. "I don't know. Like voices, whispering." Jonah leaned down, pressing his ear close to the stairs. His face suddenly went pale. "There's scratching," he stammered, "like nails scraping concrete walls." Nora's hands trembled. "I'm not going." Lara nodded sharply. Both began backing away. After a few more seconds of hesitation, Jonah stepped away from the hole too. I'm not sure about this anymore." Below, in the basement, Eli scanned the area. The flashlight revealed 3 rooms. 2 of them had no doors, just dark, open thresholds, cold as cave mouths. The third was different, a heavy wooden door, slightly ajar. Its hinges groaned softly whenever the breeze slipped through. "Should we check it out?" Drew asked. Maxine nodded, but kept one hand firmly on the pocket knife clipped inside her jacket. They didn't know that above them. The other 3 had already run after the window they'd climbed through slammed shut behind them with a chilling click. Eli stared toward the wooden door. His grip tightened on the flashlight. Behind that door was something old, not in years, but in essence. A presence not defined by shape or name. Just a low, echoing murmur in the back of the mind. Something is waiting. The wooden door opened with a sound like an old person's joints being bent the wrong way, a sharp, dragging crack, twisted and wrong. A wave of cold air hit Eli in the face, fogging the flashlight lens for a split second. Drew moved in close beside him. Maxine followed slowly behind. They stepped into a square, empty room, except for one large mirror leaning against the far stone wall. The mirror was so old, much of the silver backing had peeled away in patches, but it still reflected. Only the reflection didn't match reality. "Look at the mirror," Drew whispered. In the mirror they stood exactly where they were, but Maxine's head was turned to the side, facing something else. In reality, she hadn't moved at all. Eli stepped closer. In the reflection, he saw himself holding something. A black and white photograph. He looked down. His hands were empty. "I don't like this place," Maxine whispered, eyes still locked on the mirror. Eli swept the flashlight toward the corner of the room. There, on a worn wooden table, sat a weathered picture frame. Inside was a faded black and white photo of a woman in an old-fashioned wedding dress. She was smiling, but the smile was stiff, mask-like, and the eyes looked painted on, too large, lifeless. On the table were dark red stains, smeared in jagged, uneven patches. Drew reached out and touched it lightly. Sticky, not completely dry. "I thought stuff like this only happened in movies," Maxine said, her voice trembling now. And then, the flashlight went out. No sound, no wind, just a soft click, like someone had pulled the battery. Eli shook the light. Nothing. Drew tried turning his back on it. Still dead. A cold breath slithered across the back of their necks. Then, very soft footsteps from the hallway. They stopped, right outside the door. All 3 held their breath. "We shouldn't be here," Maxine whispered. Suddenly, from the next room, the one they had just left, a loud crash, like a wooden table collapsing, followed by a cascade of shattering glass and debris. They spun around. In the mirror, 4 people. All three stared at each other. There was no one else in the room. Eli didn't scream. None of them did. The panic came like a blast of frigid wind, propelling them out of the room as if some invisible hand had shoved them. They bolted through the hallway, scrambling up the damp staircase. The darkness behind them felt heavier, as if it was chasing. Maxine fell once, her knee scraped and bleeding, but no one stopped. As they neared the small window, the only way out, the faint glow of the street lamp outside looked like salvation. Drew climbed out first, reaching back to pull Maxine through, then Eli. No one said a word, just gasps for air, just the pounding of their hearts in their ears. They sprinted toward the car, where the other three were standing in stunned silence, Lara and Nora pale as paper. Jonah was unable to speak. The window. It closed by itself, Nora stammered. We heard something behind us. Get in, Eli said flatly. Now. No one argued. Years later, the church at 198 Elmwood was torn down. They said the soil was contaminated. The foundation is unsafe. That was the official reason. Eli is 29 now. He doesn't talk about that night much. He's lost touch with the group, all except for one message Maxine sent once at 3 a.m. I saw it, in the bathroom mirror. There were 4 of them. Eli never replied. He still keeps that message, as a reminder, as a warning, because in every dream lately, he finds himself back in that church, standing before the cracked mirror. And every time, the 4th figure, the one no one remembers clearly, is standing just a little bit closer. You've just heard 3 stories. No one died, no one went missing, but no one walked away, quite the same as before it all began. And if you're watching this late at night, check your windows, glance at your rearview mirror, and ask yourself, are you really alone? If you want to hear more stories like these, thin slivers between the ordinary and the unsettling, subscribe to the channel, like the video, and leave a comment with the story that kept you awake at night. Who knows? Your story might be the next video. Until then, we'll see you again in the next sleepless night.